Hi everyone and welcome to Sandra's Bible Tales. Today I'm gonna continue with the story of Joseph, and Joseph is Jacob's son with Rachel. Remember that Jacob had been with Rachel and Leah, the two sisters, and their maidservants, and he had had many sons. So Joseph was his favorite because he was the firstborn with Rachel. Therefore, Abraham made Joseph a coat of many colors, and his brothers envied him and they hated him. They were jealous of him. And then Joseph has a dream, and he tells his brothers his dream, and he says, I dreamt that there was wheat, and you guys had the wheat, and yours was bowing down to mine. So his brothers become furious, and they're like, what are you trying to say, that we're going to serve you? Then he has another dream, and he says, now in this dream, I see 11 stars bowing down to me, and the star and the moon. So his brothers are like, what the heck? And then his father even rebukes him, and his father considers it, but his brothers hate him. And one day, when his brothers were out, the father tells Joseph, Joseph, I want you to go to your brothers, and I want you to take them this so that they can eat. And when his brothers, when Joseph is looking for his brothers, that he's going towards them at a distance, his brothers see him and they start plotting against him, and they start saying, oh look, there comes the dreamer. They start mocking him, and they say, we should kill him. Reuben, which is Jacob's firstborn, freaks out, and he's like, that's our brother. We can't do that. We can't, you know, his blood will be upon us. We can't do that to our brother. So he says, let's throw him in a well. But his intentions were not to keep him in the well. His intentions were that when his brothers would leave, he would rescue Joseph and take him back to his father. However, when Reuben leaves for a little bit, his brothers, while they're eating, they decide to sell Joseph, because they see some men passing by, and they say, let's sell our brother. Let's sell them to the Egyptians. So they go ahead and they sell the brother. When Reuben comes back, he's like, where's the boy? He's not in the pit. He's not in the well. And they're like, no, we sold him. We're going to kill a goat. We're going to put the coat in blood and ask our father if it's his, and pretend like an animal, a beast killed him or something. And that's what they did. So now this happens, and now Judah, one of the brothers, he leaves his brothers for a little bit. He gets married to some woman, and he has 3 kids with her. When the oldest one, grows up, he gives a woman, Tamara, to his son to be his wife. But the Bible says that was wicked before the eyes of God, so God slew him. And when God slays him, then Judah tells his second son to go ahead and sleep with Tamara, the widow, and to have a family on his brother's name. But the son, because he knows that the family is going to be, the children are going to be for his brother, he doesn't want to have kids. So he sleeps with her, but he prevents conception. And because of this, God sees him as evil, and God slays him too. So these 2 sons of his died. So now Judah's freaking out, because he's thinking that this woman is cursed, and he doesn't want to give her his 3rd son, because he doesn't want his 3rd son to die. So he tells her, look, remain a widow until my 3rd son is old enough, and I'll give him to you, because that was what was supposed to be done. And she says, okay, but it was never his intention. He didn't want to lose his son. So he goes about his business. One day when she sees that this man is not giving her 3rd son to him, some women say, look, your father-in-law is going to go to this place because he's going to, do some business there. So she goes and she pretends to be a prostitute. And when he's gonna sleep with her, because he tells her, what should I give you, so that then later I can pay you, because right now I can't pay you right now. And she says, well, leave a deposit, and you leave your staff with me, and leave your signet with me, and leave like 3 things she asked of him. And he gives it to her, and then he says, okay, so tomorrow I'm gonna send my boy, you give me back my stuff, and I give you the money. She says, okay, fine. But when the boy goes back, he can't find her. And when they ask, where's a prostitute that's around here? They said, there is no harlot. There is no prostitute around here. So he's like, you know what? Don't just let her keep my stuff, because I don't want shame to come upon us because of her. So they stop looking. 3 months later, they go to Judah, and they say, look, your daughter-in-law has played the harlot. She's pregnant. She doesn't have a man, and she's pregnant. So he says, let her be burned. And she says, I want to speak to him. And she says, let whoever these possessions belong to, this is the father of my baby, of my child. And when Judah sees this, he realizes that she was the one that was playing the prostitute, and that the baby was his. So he doesn't kill her, and he says, you're more righteous than I am. And then it says, the Bible says that she's birthing twins. So as it's true that 2 of his sons died when they were with her, but at the same time she gave him two sons as well, twins. Then now when we go back to Joseph, it says that that Potiphar, which was one of Pharaoh's officers, he bought Joseph. So God allowed Joseph to go through a training, because God put Joseph in charge of everything that belonged to Potiphar. Then he put Joseph in charge of everyone in the prison, and then he put Joseph on top of everything that was Pharaoh. So God was training Joseph. He was putting him through a test to mold him. So Potiphar loved Joseph. God gave Joseph favor and grace with the Potiphar, and Potiphar put him in charge of everything. He said, everything that's mine is yours. And because of Joseph, God blessed Potiphar. The Bible says that God blessed Potiphar because of Joseph. And but Joseph was a very good-looking man. So Potiphar's wife wanted to lie with a boy, and she would insist, and he would always say no, 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 no. One day she came towards him and she grabbed him by what he was wearing, and he left running, and she stayed with his garments in her hand. So she lied, and she says that he had tried to rape her, and that when she started shouting, he left, and that's why she had his garments in her hand. So Potiphar got furious, and he locked the boy up in jail. However, the warden of the jail liked Joseph because God gave Joseph favor and grace with him, and he put him in charge of all the prisoners and in charge of everything. And one day, the Egypt's king, which is the Pharaoh, got upset with two of his servants, sent them to jail. One of them was a baker, the other one was a butler, and Joseph was in charge of them. Now, these two men had dreams on the same night. After 3 days around there, they had dreams. And no, after a couple of days, they had dreams. And Joseph notices that they're sad, and he says, why do you guys look so sad? What's wrong? And they both say, well, we both had dreams, and we don't have anyone to interpret it for us. And Joseph says, well, if our dreams not of God and interpretations of God, tell me your dream and I'll tell you the interpretation. And one of them says his dream, he says, I dreamt that there was 3 branches and this and this and that. And then Joseph tells him, well, what it means is that in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to restore your position to you, and you're going to hold his cup again. And he's all happy. And then when the butler hears this, or the baker, I don't remember which is which, when the other one hears this, he said it's a good interpretation. He says, well, I dreamt that I had a basket of bread on my head and the birds were eating from it, and more. And then Joseph says, well, in 3 days, what God is telling you is that the Pharaoh is gonna kill your head and behead you. You're gonna die. So Joseph says to the one that's gonna be restored, look, remember me please when you're restored. And he says, yes, I will, blah blah blah. Everything that Joseph says happens in the 3 days. One of them is beheaded, the other one is restored, but the one that is restored forgets all about Joseph. So it wasn't God's timing at that moment. It was too early. But 2 years after that, the Pharaoh has 2 dreams which trouble him. And one of the dreams is that there's like 7 beautiful fat cows, but then there's 7 skinny cows that eat up the fat cows, and he doesn't understand the dream. And then the second dream is very similar, but it's with something else, and Pharaoh's like, he calls the wise men, he calls the magicians, he tells them his dreams, and nobody can interpret them, and he's really upset. And then finally, this man that had been in prison tells him, look, I just remembered that when I was in prison, this young man named Joseph, he told me the interpretation of my dream, and it came to pass. And Pharaoh sends for Joseph right away. So it says, the Bible says that Joseph shaves and he changes his clothes and he makes himself presentable to come before Pharaoh. And when he comes before him and Pharaoh tells him the dream, he says, well, what your dream means is that there's going to be 7 years of prosperity, 7 years of goodness, of plenty, but then 7 years of famine will follow. So God is preparing you. He's letting you know what's going to happen so you can be prepared. So what you should do is you should choose a man to save, I believe it was like 1/5 portion or something like that out of other good years, so that when the bad years come, you have food and you can sell and you can make money and you can have food to eat, and people won't die. And he says, well, this is great. Who better than you? Like, you're going to be that man. You have the Spirit of God in you. You can interpret dreams and you're qualified. He says, you're going to be in charge of everything. I'm going to trust you with everything. The only thing that's going to separate me from you is going to be my throne. So this is how I see how God is so awesome, that he had been preparing Joseph. And then one day, well, Joseph is in charge of this, and when the years of famine come, Jacob, his father, sent his brothers. He says, we're going to die unless you guys go to Egypt, because I heard in Egypt they have plenty and they're selling food. He goes, so I need you guys to go to Egypt and buy stuff for us lest we die. And his brothers go, and he recognizes his brothers immediately, but his brothers don't recognize him, because now he looked like an Egyptian, he dressed like an Egyptian, and he spoke the language of the Egyptians. So his brothers don't recognize him. He goes up to his brothers and he says, you guys are spies. And he says, no, look, we're not. Our father sent us. We're 12 brothers. One of us died. The other one, Benjamin, is with our father. Our father, protects him a lot because his Jacob, his son, died, and they're from the same mother, which is the mother that he loved the most, the woman that he loved the most, the wife that he loved the most. So he tells the story to Joseph, and Joseph says, you guys are spies, and he throws them in prison. And when they're in prison, when this happens, Joseph overhears them talking in Hebrew language, and they're saying, "You see, this happens to us because of what we did to Joseph. Because when Joseph was begging, we didn't care. So now we're sowing what we reaped." And Joseph he understood everything, but they didn't know he understood the language because he would use a translator. And then Joseph lets them go, and he says, "Look, I don't want your father to starve. Go on your way." And he goes, "And the way I'm going to know if this is true is you're going to leave one of your brothers here with me as a prisoner. And when you come back, you're going to bring your brother that you talk about, Benjamin." So they do all of this. And when they're leaving on their way, they notice that all the money that they had paid food with is all restored to them because Joseph had told his servant to give them back all of their money. So they freak out because now they're thinking, "Oh my goodness, he's going to think we stole from him." They go to the father, they tell the father everything that happened. And the father says, "Well, there's no way I'm letting you guys take Benjamin. If anything happens to Benjamin, I'm going to die." So they go ahead and time passes by. And when time passes by and they already eat everything that they had bought and they're back to square one. And the father says, "I need you to go back to Egypt." The brother says, "I'm not going to go back to Egypt without Benjamin because this man already told me that if I didn't bring Benjamin, not even to go back." And the father says, "Okay, well, the father, I guess, figures if I don't send Benjamin, we're all going to die. We're going to starve to death." So he says, "Fine, you're going to go with Benjamin. You're going to take all of these gifts to this man." And he sends them on their way. They go to Joseph. When they go to Joseph, Joseph has this big dinner for them. He dines with them. He gives so much to them. And when they're leaving, Joseph tells his servant to put his cup, Joseph's cup, in Benjamin's sack. So when they're leaving, they have no idea of this. They're leaving to the father. And Joseph follows them, and he says, "Why have you done this, why have you traded evil for good? I gave you all of this to dine." The brothers were even shocked because he even sat them in order from oldest to youngest. And they were like, "How does this man know so much about us?" Like, they were shocked. They had no idea that this was a brother. So when he catches up to them, he says, "Why have you done this? I've done so much good for you, and you repay me with evil." And the brothers are like, "In what way?" And he says, "Well, you stole my cup." And he says, "We didn't do that." He says, "If anyone here has your cup, let him be your slave." And Joseph says, "Okay." So they find the cup. When they're searching, they find the cup in Benjamin's sack. And Judah stands up and he says, "Look, I'm sorry, but take me instead. Don't take Benjamin. My father will die." My father strictly, he didn't even want Benjamin to come. He came because we needed the food, and you insisted and you told us, "But please, I beg of you." And he says, "We were 12 brothers. One of them died, and he was my father's favorite. And if you take Benjamin away from him, this is going to be on me." And Judah even says, "I even told my father to that I will give my two sons for him. Like, please, I can't have this happen." So Joseph starts weeping. He can't take it. He tells everyone else to leave, and he starts weeping out loud. And he tells his brother, "Look, it's me, it's Joseph." And his brothers are shocked and stunned, and they're speechless. And Jacob is like, Joseph is like, "Is my father still alive?" And they're just like speechless. And he says, "Look, don't be afraid. I understand that this was God's doing. Yes, I understand that you sold me, but God had a plan, because if not, we would all be starving. And look how God has blessed me, and God has put me in charge of all of this. Please, don't be afraid." And he weeps over them. He weeps over Benjamin, and Benjamin weeps over them. And he kisses all of his brothers, and he tells them, "Please go back to my father. Bring my father to me. Tell him I'm in charge of all of this. Tell him to bring everyone." And even the Egyptians, when they hear about this, they say, "Yeah, tell your father not to worry about everything he leaves behind and the land, that everything in Egypt will be his." And so the father, of course, when he finds out, he rejoices that his son is alive, and God brings forth restoration. And then it even says that Joseph remembers his dreams from when he was younger, that God showed him how the sun and the stars would bow down to him, and the dreams that he had, that God confirmed to him that it was all a plan. It was all God's plan all along. So his suffering was in order for God to bless him and to be able to provide for his family. So that's the story of Joseph and his brothers and his father. I hope you all enjoyed the Bible story of Joseph, and thanks for watching Sandra's Bible Tales. Have a good day.